Executive Director of the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security, Ambassador Milan Vivir.
Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to each of you as we come together to recognize women's global leadership in advancing peace, security, and safeguarding democracy. As often been said, the status of women is the status of democracy. Peace, economic stability, and democratic ideals cannot exist without women's rights and leadership. And attacks on these rights are often the first warning sign of democratic decline. But as authoritarian threats grow, many women are not only resisting, they are leading the struggle against them. Today, we honor these women leaders who are advancing democracy through media platforms and journalism, resisting authoritarians through protests, and even imprisonment to protect the principles they hold dear. Before we begin, let me add a very special welcome to the members of the Diplomatic Corps who are here, ambassadors from Austria, Bangladesh, Estonia, Finland, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Slovenia, and Spain, and the Chargé from the United Kingdom, as well as diplomatic representatives from Denmark, Luxembourg, Japan, Germany, the EU, Ukraine, Jordan, France, Sweden, Indonesia, Brazil, Canada, and Moldova. Welcome to each and one of you. We're delighted to have you with us. And I want to thank Her Excellency, the Luxembourg Ambassador, for hosting our honorees at the embassy this evening. We're always happy to have Dean Hellman of Georgetown School of Foreign Service with us, and he will join us later on the stage for the presentation of the awards. And finally, a very warm welcome to the Georgetown ambassadors for our institute who have traveled from across the United States and overseas to be here today. And now it is my great personal pleasure to welcome Secretary Hillary Clinton to the Hilltop. She's been here many times, and we're always happy when she comes back. We're very grateful to her for her support of the Institute as our honorary founding chair, for her engagement on some of the most important initiatives, like our Global Women Leaders annual gathering, and for her continuing inspiration. It was from this very stage, when she was Secretary of State, that she announced the United States National Action Plan for Women, Peace, and Security. And her leadership on behalf of women's rights as human rights has had a profound impact on the world. She has achieved much as First Lady, Senator, Secretary of State, and the first woman nominee for President of the United States by a major political party. And as we all know, she went on to win the popular vote in 2016, only to fall short in the Electoral College. But what defines her best is her commitment to making the world a better place. And I just want to add, for all of us, our congratulations to the Secretary and to her husband and our fellow Hoya. They just marked their 50th wedding anniversary this weekend, so congratulations. So please give a very warm welcome to Secretary Hillary Clinton.
Thank you so much, Milan, and it is such a great pleasure and always a personal honor to be here at Georgetown. I want to thank you, Dean Hellman, for your leadership and really for the commitment of this university to women's roles in every walk of life in every part of the world. You know, Milan and I founded this institute some years back, more than a decade ago, to recognize the importance of women's participation and leadership in global peace building, security, and the safeguarding of democracy. Well, the work has only grown more urgent, and it's caused me to think about how far we've come, but how far we still have to go. As Milan referenced 30 years ago, this year in Beijing, I shared a simple but transformational truth that women's rights are human rights at the 4th World Conference on Women in Beijing. The speech was exciting, exhilarating, but the most important substantive accomplishment of that conference was something called a platform for action, which gave us a blueprint for change, a roadmap toward women's equality. 189 countries agreed to sign on to the platform for action. You know, that consensus seems almost unimaginable today. And yet, with women's equality and progress under attack worldwide, the need for the same courage and solidarity that we experienced at Beijing could not be more urgent. At the recent Bellagio conference that is sponsored by Georgetown, women leaders from around the world signed a new compact. And in it, we recommended that in order to fulfill the promise of Beijing, we had to do more to defend democracy everywhere. Because while many of the recommendations that were outlined in the Platform for Action have been implemented, for example, making domestic violence a crime. Back then, it was not considered a crime in the vast majority of the world's nations. And my wonderful predecessor and a great Hoya, Madeleine Albright, famously said, domestic violence is not cultural, it's criminal. So we made progress in criminalizing violence in the home and in many other areas, opening the doors of secondary education, creating more opportunities for women to participate in not just the political life and the economic life, but all aspects of society. But what we have learned in those 30 years is that the rights outlined in that platform for action are not enough without the power to claim and hold them. For example, over the past 30 years, women's workforce participation has flatlined. Violence against women still persists, especially in conflict areas, of which there are far too many. Power and leadership is still dominated by men. Peace and security is still, unfortunately, hammered out, usually among and by men, with women being sidelined, despite evidence, much of it coming from the Georgetown Institute on Women, Peace, and Security, that women being involved in peacemaking and peace securing makes peace last longer. And even when rights are on paper, if we don't invest in women's ability to claim those rights, if we don't stand against social norms that strip women of their rights in practice, we can't claim that we are moving toward equality. And as Milan referenced, it is no coincidence that where women are oppressed, democracy falters and authoritarianism rises. From suffrage to civil rights movements, women's participation is critical to democracy. And when autocrats attack democracy, they always seem to target women. And we see that everywhere. Argentina's president vowed to remove femicide from the penal code. Turkey withdrew from the landmark Istanbul Convention addressing violence against women. And we know so well Afghan women are barred from any element of public life. Even here in our own country, we've seen some troubling signs of turning progress against women's future. But women are fighting back, and you're going to meet some of them today. From Tunisia to South Korea, from Poland to Latin America, women are protesting, registering voters, leading legal challenges, Reproductive rights movements have become engines of democratic resistance. We have seen women defending their equality, which has in turn strengthened democracy. And the women we honor today have used their voices and their pens to resist authoritarianism under the most stringent of threats. And they've shown why autocrats often target women, because women standing up and speaking out become a very powerful force. Maria Ressa is not only a talented journalist, she is a passionate advocate for press freedom in her own home country, the Philippines, but really across the world. Despite intimidation and harassment and legal attacks, she has remained absolutely dauntless in her drive to shine a bright light on corruption, to combat misinformation and disinformation, and to hold the powerful to account. She has become, I believe, the world's most important alarm system to absolutely warn us about what technology and social media are doing to our rights and to democracy. You'll hear more from Maria in a minute, but just Google her and look at and read a number of her speeches everywhere from this country to the Vatican and beyond, trying to make sure we understand we are willingly giving up our privacy, our most personal information, our agency, and our rights. Anne Applebaum is an extraordinary journalist. She's also a compelling voice for justice and a chronicler of autocracy. Her potent, award-winning histories detail how authoritarians operate, and she uses the past to inform the present and warn about the future. Her ongoing coverage of the conflict in Ukraine keeps a spotlight where it's needed on the brutality of the Russian invasion and the bravery of the Ukrainian people. The young women student protesters from Bangladesh have shown the power of collective action and standing up to a corrupt government. They led marches, they spoke out in the streets, they became the face of an uprising led by young people that won change. As Bangladesh rebuilds, they continue to fight for women's equality in the new government because they know that true democracy is impossible without women's participation. And the women of Venezuela, who have been speaking out against a corrupt autocratic regime. Some are even imprisoned as we speak, and the Nobel Prize winner, just named, remains in hiding. We honor their courage today because it is impossible to overstate the bravery it takes to keep speaking up for your rights, for your freedom, for your democracy, even as a government targets you. Their voices serve as a call to action for the rest of the world. And we have to continue to lift up them and their stories and speak out with them against injustice. These women remind us of the great privilege and also the great obligation we all have to use our own voices. We cannot be silent in the face of corruption and injustice anywhere, including here at home. So as we lift up our allies who are fighting for democracy and freedom, let's also lift up those here who are trying to do the same against the militarization of our cities, against the stripping of rights, against corruption out in the open, against the kind of actions being taken that are right out of the authoritarian playbook. The women we honor today have stood firm against a lot of blowback, a lot of intimidation. And they have shown that the rise of authoritarianism is not a foregone conclusion. We can turn the tide. We can lift up not just women, but men as well, who are standing firm for our rights and our freedoms. So, as we hear their stories, let us recommit today to our shared fight. Yes, for women's rights and for democracy, because they go hand in hand. So I want to congratulate and thank each of our awardees, because they are showing us the path forward with courage and with faith in the possibility of a better, freer, more just world. Thank you.
Democracy is under threat. Technology has splintered our sense of truth and shared reality. Authoritarians have pushed back against civil rights and freedom to increase their power. They undermine elections, bully their neighbors, and stoke hatred towards women, minorities, and the media. Yet, despite these dangerous threats, women are fighting back. Today, we are honoring women who are standing up to this authoritarian backlash.
Putin was saying, I don't care about your rules.
Leaders who are resisting the destructive forces of social media technologies.
When you have no facts, the only government that can survive is a dictatorship.
And everyday people who build movements that push for change.
We all are leaders now, and we will continue our fight.
It is still a difficult world. But these women show us how to resist the backslide into darkness, to fight for truth, to fight for freedom.
Now it's time to build. What you choose to do matters. Please, let's hold the line together.
And now to the awardees. Maria Ressa. In her acceptance lecture for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2021, the journalist noted that without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. And without trust, we have no shared identity, no shared reality, no democracy. And it becomes impossible to deal with our world's existential problems, like climate, COVID, the battle for truth. She received the Nobel Peace Prize for her efforts to safeguard freedom of expression in the Philippines, which is a precondition for democracy and lasting peace, and for her efforts to expose abuse of power and human rights under the authoritarian Duterte regime. She, like few others, understands that democracy is a fragile institution and one that can be easily destroyed by disinformation. Maria co-founded Rappler in 2012, a Manila-based digital media company for investigative journalism. Earlier, she had spent nearly 2 decades as a leading investigative reporter in Southeast Asia. Rappler was the first multimedia news website in the Philippines. It became known for exposing the weaponization of social media, as well as government corruption and human rights violations. Among the abuses that Rappler reported was about a so-called troll army pushing out fake news stories and manipulating the narrative around Duterte's presidency. She has faced very serious threats and hardships. The Duterte government did not take kindly to her exposés and instigated a series of unjust charges, investigations, and legal actions against her. from tax evasion to cyber libel. At one point, she was arrested and faced up to 6 years in prison and a stiff fine. She warned that her conviction could mean the end of press freedom in her country. The National Union of Journalists in the Philippines called it a chilling development that basically kills freedom of speech and the press. She's been acquitted in multiple cases, but is still awaiting a final ruling on a cyber libel conviction from 2020. She's the author of several books, including How to Stand Up to a Dictator, The Fight for Our Future. And she has warned repeatedly about the weaponization of social media. As she has noted, its lies laced with anger and hate spread online fast and further than facts, and that AI undermines trust in information in new and challenging ways. She's also reminded us that gender disinformation is a growing threat that is taking a significant toll on mental health and the physical safety of women and girls. And as she says, the pandemic of misogyny and hatred needs to be tackled, and tackled now. She put it starkly: algorithms of distribution have been programmed by humans with their coded bias. They are driven by profits carried out by machines at scale. The impact is global, with cheap armies on social media tearing down democracy. She has been described as fighting a war where the written word is her weapon, where truth is her goal, and every exposure of the misuse of power is a victory. And now a few words from one of her admirers.
Hey guys, John Stewart here. Normally I would say something like, oh geez, I'm so sorry that I can't be with you today at the ceremony. And I generally don't mean that. Generally I'll say that, but generally there's a reason why I didn't want to do it and not show up. But this time, here's what I'm saying. I am genuinely sorry that I couldn't be there. And the reason is, you're lucky enough to have Maria Ressa in the house. She is the most dynamic and dedicated warrior to causes of peace against authoritarianism. Her strength, her dignity, her tireless fighting spirit. Whenever I am feeling that the world is slowly closing in and becoming darker, she is someone that I always look to as a source of light. And by the way, not in a Pollyanna-ish way. If there's one thing about Maria Ressa, it's not, don't worry, it'll be fine. Like, none of that. She tells the truth. And the truth is what illuminates in these dark times. And that's her speciality. And that's what I love about her. And she does it in a way that genuinely re-energizes. She is, if you have some type of EV that you drove today to this incredible award ceremony, just have Maria lay her hands on it, or like walk by it, and it will be recharged. So Maria, I can't think of a more worthy recipient for an award that has the word peace in it. And I just love you so much, and so grateful for all the phenomenal work that you do. And I actually wish I could be there right now.
And now to the award citation. For safeguarding democracy and freedom of the press, despite intimidation and acts of injustice against her. For warning us of the gravity of disinformation and the need to address it. And for her commitment to the truth at all costs. Georgetown is proud to present the 2025 Hillary Rodham Clinton Award to Maria Ressa for advancing women in peace, security, and in safeguarding democracy. Anne Applebaum is an acclaimed journalist and a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian of our time. She has been sounding the alarm about the political threats facing democracy today, the perils of authoritarianism, which is promoting social polarization, spreading disinformation and propaganda through the internet, engaging in corrupt financial arrangements, abrogating the rule of law, holding on to power above all else. Living between the United States, the UK, and Poland over many years, as well as relying on extensive scholarship, has provided her with a keen understanding of the forces that are bent on undermining democracy and what it will take to defeat these forces. She is one of the foremost experts on the history of communism, particularly in Eastern and Central Europe, and has written several books on its terrible consequences. And she has become one of the most informed and outspoken voices on Russia's war against Ukraine and its implications for democracy and freedom much beyond Ukraine. She early on saw Putin as a threat to democracy, and especially in her articles in The Atlantic, she has argued that the West has not adequately responded to Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Her book, Twilight of Democracy: The Seductive Lure of Authoritarianism, has been described as a brilliant dissection of a world-shaking shift and a stirring glimpse of the road back to democratic values. She describes the authoritarian playbook and explains the fragility of democracy. Any society, she says, can turn against democracy. And in her most recent book, Autocracy: The Dictators Who Want to Run the World, she shows us how autocrats work together to undermine the democratic world and how we should organize to defeat them. So too, the decline of democracy often coincides, as we've been hearing, with the rollback of women's rights and works to erode long-achieved gains. Yet the struggle for women's rights is so essential to the larger fight for democratic values. As Anne insists, legal equality for women is not a peripheral cause, but one that belongs smack in the middle of the democracy debate. And she noted the work of women leaders for pushing back against rising autocratic regimes, like Maya Sandu of Moldova, in her victory, most recently, again, against the Russian-backed forces and their massive disinformation campaign. And she has underscored democracy requires citizens to be vigilant and engaged. It needs committed people to make it work, because so much is at stake. She, as few others, helps us understand the war of ideas between autocratic and democratic thinking that, as she notes, characterizes our times. And now to the award citation. For her indefatigable advocacy and powerful voice for safeguarding democracy in these perilous times, through her books, articles, lectures, and commentaries, for her warnings about the rise of authoritarianism and the call to action to those who would cherish democratic values, and for her commitment to an enduring democratic Ukraine. Georgetown is proud to present the 2025 Hillary Rodham Clinton Award for Advancing Women in Peace, Security, and in Safeguarding Democracy to Anne Applebaum. And we're just getting started. In the summer of 2024, Bangladesh was gripped in massive protests that led to the ouster of the authoritarian ruler, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. The protesters were opposing the increasing repressive autocratic rule that had suppressed dissent through the arbitrary arrest of citizens and engaged with impunity, forcing disappearances and killings, fostering inequality, and growing the chasm between the elites who did well and the vast majority who did not. On the night of July 14th, women students defied a curfew imposed by Hasina. They were outraged by the reinstatement of quotas reserved for the elite who had supported Sheikh Hasina and her party. The majority of government jobs, which provided the most stability and opportunity, were not being awarded on merit, and this in a time of high youth unemployment. So theirs was a protest against discrimination. Very shortly thereafter, the women were joined by male students that eventually led to a movement across the country, a movement for justice, accountability, equality, and democracy. The peaceful protest was met with excessive and widespread violence by Hasina's security forces. One witness described the indiscriminate shooting of protesters like they were ordering someone to shoot in a video game. The women students were at the forefront of the protest, often acting as human shields at the front of the marches. They were confronting the riot police and the military. They were key organizers and mobilizers, both online and on the ground. And they stood firm despite the violence and abuse used against them in the form of beatings and even death. According to the United Nations estimates, over 1,000 people were killed in the clashes brought on by the barbarity of the security forces against the students. When Hasina fled the country, women students worked to bring peace to the streets and to help establish with their fellow male students an interim government that today is grappling in the aftermath of decades of violence, impunity, and abuse of power. They reached out to Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus and pleaded with him to lead the interim government, which took office on August the 8th, 2024. The interim government established 6 commissions on future reforms, including an inquiry commission probing thousands of forced disappearances during her time in office. And one of those commissioners is a leader in the student protest movement who is now a university professor and from whom we will hear a little later. The last year has not been without ongoing political difficulties and challenges to much-needed reforms, to the security forces and creation of strong and lasting democratic institutions. And the women students have continued to push for women's equality. A long-time struggle in Bangladesh, as it is in so many other places still. They have been advocating for women's meaningful participation in the interim government and in future elected government. Elections have now been set for February. And in the words of a female advocate, the government must bring us to the negotiating table. We need to be involved at every level of decision-making because we need real and lasting peace in Bangladesh. The events that ousted Sheikh Hasina constituted the most widespread participation of women in street protests in the history of Bangladesh. We have received a statement from the interim president, Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, and I'll just read a portion. The July Revolution in Bangladesh, he said, stands as a defining moment in our nation's history, a spontaneous people's movement rooted in the pursuit of justice, equality, and democratic values. As we reflect on this pivotal chapter, it is essential to recognize and honor the remarkable role played by women, whose courage, resilience, and leadership not only shaped the course of the revolution, but laid the foundation for future progress in our society. What these young women have achieved is unprecedented. Their actions serve as a powerful reminder that the pursuit of justice cannot be fulfilled without the full and equal participation of women. And these brave women have shattered long-standing societal norms and redefined the role of women in public and political life. So let's celebrate these heroines, not only with our words, but with our unwavering commitment to the ideals they stood for. My heartfelt appreciation to the Georgetown Institute and to my dear friend Hillary Clinton for her steadfast dedication to advancing and protecting women's rights around the world. And now for the award citation. To the women students of Bangladesh for their commitment to justice, equality, and democracy manifested in their peaceful protests against a repressive authoritarian leader, for their courage and bravery in the face of violent security force response, and for their continuing dedication to the promotion of democratic values in their society. Georgetown is honored to present the 2025 Hillary Rodham Clinton Award to the women students of Bangladesh for their advancement of women in peace, security, and in safeguarding democracy. And accepting the award on behalf of all the women students is Tanjina Taman Hapsa, a central coordinator of the pro-democracy July Uprising movement. Like all of you, I awoke last Friday to learn that the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Maria Corina Machado. The opposition leader in Venezuela for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy. We had wanted to honor Machado, but she didn't want the attention placed on her, but instead on Venezuela's courageous women political leaders. As she wrote to me in August, I write to you from the clandestinity in which I have been forced to live for nearly a year to convey my gratitude for the immense honor of the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security's decision to grant me the 2025 Hillary Rodham Clinton Award, a source of inspiration for all of us who fight for freedom and democracy in the world, especially for us women. Venezuela, she wrote, is at a decisive crossroads. We are facing criminal tyranny that has brutally deployed its entire repressive apparatus, persecuting thousands of citizens and inflicting immense suffering upon them and their families. However, this repression is also the desperate response to a society that remains firm, unyielding, and in resistance, refusing to surrender. In this context, Venezuelan women have been a fundamental pillar of our struggle. Today, hundreds of women have been forced into hiding and many others are imprisoned for leading this cause with determination. For this reason, I would like to propose with the deepest respect and gratitude that this award become a collective recognition dedicated to the movement that sustains the struggle today, especially the women victims and the women political prisoners whose resistance and sacrifice embody the very spirit of this distinction. I am convinced by shining a light on an entire movement and on those who have paid the highest price, we will send a powerful message of support to our cause and to the millions of Venezuelans who persist in their determination to achieve freedom. This was Maria Corina Machado's message to us. And in that spirit today, we come together to honor the courageous women political prisoners of Venezuela. The repression in Venezuela grew worse after the election of 2024. Maduro claimed victory over Edmundo Gonzalez and Maria Corina Machado. She was prohibited by Maduro for running for president. And when she was barred, she became the driving force behind Gonzalez. Despite overwhelming evidence that Maduro lost the election, he nevertheless manipulated the process to remain in office for a third term. Following the election fraud, a brutal wave of repression was carried out across the country as he and his security forces crushed dissent, escalated political prosecutions with massive arrests, and the forced disappearance of political opponents. It has been described as a state of terror against the Venezuelan people. Dozens of women are being held as political prisoners. They face terrible, inhumane conditions, uniquely subjected to sexual and gender-based violence, including rape as a method of humiliation, torture, and coercion. In addition to the sexual violence, the horrific detention conditions disproportionately are impacting the women. They've been rounded up on Trump charges to silence their dissent. Many are held without contact with lawyers or family members, and families are living in unending anguish and uncertainty, clinging to whatever signs of life of their loved ones. Children are traumatized by the arrest of their mothers. Today, we shed a bright light on these courageous defenders of democracy in Venezuela. Their photos are depicted on the collage on this stage. They continue to be persecuted because they put justice, accountability, and democracy ahead of their own safety. As Maria Machado humbly wrote to us, this distinction serves as a tribute to them, not to me, and as a testament to their courage, their sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to freedom. And now for the citation. Georgetown is proud to present the 2025 Hillary Rodham Clinton Award for advancing peace, security, and in safeguarding democracy to the courageous women political prisoners of Venezuela. Accepting the award on behalf of all of the political prisoners are Daniele Hernandez, who is the daughter of political prisoner Nelita Sanchez. Her mother was arrested just weeks after the presidential elections by the agents of the National Intelligence Service. She's an activist and coordinator of an NGO, Somate, an election monitoring organization whose aim was to promote the free exercise of citizens' political rights. Her mother continues to be denied access to legal counsel. Her whereabouts were unknown until August, and despite the lack of evidence, she was charged with terrorism, incitement to hatred, conspiracy, treason, and criminal association. Dinelli has denounced the irregularities in the judicial process used against her mother and has expressed deep concern about her mother's health. Along with Dinelli, with us is Rosa Virginia Gonzalez, Arizmendi. She is a former political prisoner and social activist. She was persecuted and held as a political prisoner for 10 months, and she was arrested while she was delivering food to a friend living in extreme poverty and charged with possession of weapons and ammunition, despite the fact that at her arrest she only had packages of pre-cooked corn flour. She was eventually released in poor health. She continues to be persecuted and was forced to leave Venezuela. Geraldine Afiyuni is the daughter of political prisoner Judge Maria Lourdes Afiyuni, a political prisoner under Hugo Chavez. She was detained after granting conditional release to Venezuelan opposition figure, tortured, suffered sexual violence, and received death threats. She eventually was released after spending 1,281 days in prison, sentenced for spiritual corruption. And finally, Seram Rivas is a human rights defender and Venezuelan democracy activist. She too was a political prisoner held in one of the worst prisons in the Western Hemisphere when she was a student leader. She is currently the coordinator of the Committee of Families and Friends for the Freedom of Political Prisoners. Her partner, Jesus Armas, a political leader and member of the campaign team of Maria Corina Machado, is currently imprisoned in the same facility where Seram was imprisoned. I ask all of them to come to the stage for the award on behalf of the courageous political leaders of women political leaders of Venezuela. And now we have the chance to hear from our awardees. And I'm going to ask everybody the same question before turning it over to our audience and especially our students. And the question is, what keeps you all going in this increasingly difficult struggle? What motivates you to keep going? And what message do you have to our audience here and to those who are joining us online today? And let's start with you, our Venezuelan friend.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you for having us here. This is such an honor for us. And also apologize in advance for it because I have a little of a broken English. But I just wanted to say that for me, what's motivating me to keep going is just to stop the people in Venezuela of living in fear. Women and people in Venezuela live in fear daily. Fear of think, of talk, of be part of a political party. We have political prisoners in Venezuela for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And we shouldn't have to live like that. We should live in freedom. We should have democracy. My mom shouldn't be in jail. All political prisoners shouldn't be in jail. So I will continue working on that and working for that until this regime, this corrupt and autocratic regime in Venezuela is out of there. I mean, I will always choose vote over bullets and everything, just as Maria Corina Machado did and will continue doing. But yeah, I will still working for that. I will continue working for that. And my recall for all of you is just let's reunite, let's talk, let's use your platforms and your networks and your relatives and your friends to keep the situation in Venezuela on top, to don't forget what we are living there. And please don't forget about the situation of the political prisoners. They deserve to go home. They deserve to be with their families, with their relatives, with their mothers, with their sons. So that, yeah, that should be what motivates me. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria? What
Next.
keeps you going, my dear?
Because we went from hell to purgatory. That's one, right? Like you, and I guess let me pull that to something personal to each of you also, right? You move in today's world without any guarantees of what your efforts, where your efforts will bring you. But because you believe in your values, because you believe in democracy, you take each step forward. You know, in the Philippines, we said that we hold the line. I think Poland holds the line. We hold the line because that line is the line of the rights guaranteed by the Constitution. We have, in the Philippines, a constitution patterned after the United States. And what we saw was a collapse of a very powerful executive, a legislative that collapsed, and then a judiciary that was targeted person by person. So democracy today is a person-to-person battle. And I think, hi guys, that's what we have to do, and it's global, right? So I say it's not just the Philippines, it's Brazil. We went from hell to purgatory, and it's getting better. Right? But the world is on fire. This is a critical moment for all of us. What keeps me going? I'm exhausted, right? Like, I think last year, I'm finishing my taxes, but like over 100 speeches in a year. And I hit a different city every week because, and here's why. If you are standing still, you're not doing enough. If you're thinking about it, you're not doing enough. Because a decade from now, your kids will ask you, what did you do in that moment? And you are gonna wanna know that you did everything you could, because this is it. This is the moment. So the best part, it is historic. And what will happen next is all gonna be up to us. That's what keeps me going.
What did you do in that moment? We hear you. Anne.
So I am a little bit of the odd one on this stage because I'm the only one who hasn't been attacked by their own government, at least not yet. But I'm lucky in other ways as well. And one of the ways I've been lucky is that over 35 years in journalism, I have had the opportunity to meet really extraordinary people who have struggled for justice, for a better society, for democracy, for freedom in so many different contexts, in Iran, in Russia, in the Philippines, in Venezuela. I meet them over and over again, and whatever the struggle, whatever the obstacles, they've continued to fight. Sometimes when I come back to my own country, when I'm in the United States, I hear people say, but what can we do? there's too much. It's overwhelming. The amount of news is so much we can't even absorb it. The power of the government, of the regime that's being created is too strong. I don't want to listen to the news anymore. It's too upsetting. I'm going to stay home. And then I think about the people in really hard places, people in places like Venezuela, or in Bangladesh, or in the Philippines, and I think what they've done. And I want to grab Americans around the neck and say, you have so much liberty and so much opportunity, and you are so lucky, and you have so much freedom, and there's so many organizations you can join, and there's so many books you can read, and there's so many articles you can write and read and pass on. There's so many things that you can do. And I think it's that feeling, above all, that motivates me. There's a lot of pessimism right now in the United States. But I genuinely feel, I've said this before, but I'll say it again, that pessimism is irresponsible. Pessimism is... Pessimism is what the autocrats, what the dictators, what the kleptocrats, what the oligarchs, that's what they want you to feel. They want you to be a nihilist, they want you to be a cynic, they want you to be apathetic, they want you to say, I can't do anything, who am I by myself? This is the opposite of what you need to do. You need to be optimistic, and you need to look forward, you need to think about the future, and above all, you need to be connected. Because as a group, you can do a lot more than you can alone. So that's my message. Thank you.
It's an important message. We can't afford the luxury of pessimism. Tangina.
Yes. Thank you so much, and distinguished guests, the member of Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, and the fellow women leaders who are sitting in front of me. Thank you all for hearing me, and I am deeply honored to be here and receiving this award as a representative of Bangladeshi women, the courageous women, and I am the representative of the women who were choose to speak when silence was the safe thing, and they choose to show their courage when fear rolled in our country. And you know, as you understand, the 50% population are women in our country, and the scenario is the same in all the universities. And so the women participation in the revolution was so necessary. And then the women was played the pivotal role in that July revolution, and they came forward. They just mobilized these revolutions, this movement, and then we just did it, and we did it, and we. And if I want to tell myself how I am involved in this situation, I just have seen the women around me who are suffering lack of good governance, the lack of the rule of law, and the political goodwill. And then I just have seen the women are suffering in the domestic sphere. They are suffering in the educational institutions. They're suffering in the street. They're suffering in the public buses, and they're suffering in their classroom workplaces. And that pushes me to speak out and lead my community, lead my dorm. Whenever the revolution broke down, then I just coordinate all the students from my dorm, and by offering a leaflet and encouraging them to mobilize this movement. And we are the women from Bangladesh. We just wanted to reclaim our dignity, reclaim the peace and the justice, not just for the changing the government. And we did it. and we are now optimistic for the future, and we just now aware about our rights, and the young people have been so much aware about their rights, and they are doing a great job. And as for me, I am from a village side, and I just always have seen how women is suffering, and now I am working for the women, for the youth, and it is the very first time after the July revolution in our university, the student election, union election has been occurred, and I am right now the elected Assistant General Secretary of Bangladesh Kuwait Multi Hall Parliament, and I am leading the women. And also, we are just now have involved the concept of youth parliament in Bangladesh for the very first time, and we will spread in all over our country, and we are now preparing ourselves for the future leading stage. And we are also struggling, and we are also in the revolution right now, because you know, everything can change by day. It takes time, and we are just want to tell every woman who are struggling in every corner of this world, just keep hoping and keep trying and keep efforting. And every woman suffering in Gaza, in Afghanistan, in Sudan, in Venezuela, and we just will tell you, just never give up. If you women become unite, and then you are unstoppable, and you will do so many things. Thank you so much from Bangladesh.
No, Tanjina, somehow I could see you leading the protests. And remember, the movement started in a dormitory. So we were to have another Bangladeshi student join us today, Nabila Idris. She had to stay back to care for her parents, but she has done a video for us, and she is one of the commissioners looking at that inquiry on forced disappearances. She's been defined as the bravest woman in Bangladesh, so we're going to just hear from her briefly as well.
Thank you so much for this award. I feel I accept it not just for myself, but for the students, the families, and the disappeared, and all those who continue to believe that truth still has a place in this world. And I thank the organizers for recognizing this collective struggle that we're all engaged in. In my country, in Bangladesh, the fact that unarmed students and ordinary people stood up to 15 years of fascism last year, and against surveillance, against disappearances and killings, and they won without firing a single shot. It is a testament to the bravery of the people of my land and to the mercy of the Almighty. During the uprising last year, my husband and I, we helped however we could, bringing water and food to protest sites. But one day, I was contacted about a young woman protest leader. Her house was being repeatedly raided by the detective branch, and so she needed shelter. We had never met. She was told what I was wearing, what I would be wearing, and then I was told what she would be wearing. When we met, we simply said, you don't know my name, and I don't know yours, and let it stay that way. And it had to stay that way, because the plan was, and that's how we operated, that if either of us was caught, if we were interrogated, we wouldn't be able to reveal the other person's identity, because you couldn't reveal what you didn't know. She stayed with us for several days, and I only actually finally learned her name and identity after victory. This is how ordinary citizens had to live, quietly, courageously, in fact, adopting guerrilla tactics just to survive. The revolution really, truly belonged to everyone. Today, I serve as a member of the Commission of Inquiry on Enforced Disappearances. The work is painful but necessary. We've received over 1,800 complaints. Each individual, a life, a family. It's a prayer for justice. I remember one visit to a prison a few months ago, and we were there to verify whether one of the detainees was in fact a victim of enforced disappearance. When we met the man, he was very afraid of us, and he was very scared, and it showed in his demeanor. And then when we talked to him for a little bit, he said, "Who are you? I thought you'd come to kill me." And we said, "No, of course not. We've come to hear your story. What has happened to you?" And he was so stunned, because in his experience, this has never happened before. Like, people who are from the authorities do not come to listen to their stories and try to find what injustice has happened to them. They come to kill. So he was very stunned. And then he said, "Who are you? Are you people of this era?" and my colleague, he replied, "Yes, we're people of this era because the country is finally free. So we're people of the free land." That moment stays with me because it shows how long silence had lasted in my country and how fragile freedom still is. And I cannot end without remembering the genocide in Palestine. When I see mothers there searching for their children under the rubble, I see the same grief I have seen in the eyes of the families in my country, the same longing for justice and the same faith that sustains them. Our struggles are connected. The fight for freedom, whether in Dhaka or in Gaza, it's one and the same. It's a fight to affirm life over death, truth over denial, and mercy over cruelty. Thank you again for this recognition. I accept it not as an ending, but as an encouragement to keep working, to keep believing, and to keep standing with all those who still wait for justice. Thank you again.
And before we go to the students, Secretary Clinton, you've been part of this for a long time. You started today reminding us about the anniversary of the Fourth World UN Conference in Beijing. Women's rights are human rights. Women still are too often marginalized, generally, but also in this struggle for democracy. How do you see moving women to be recognized more for the pivotal role that they are playing and must play? And what's your call to action to all of us today?
Well, I think you've seen some great examples already of the ways in which women have demonstrated their willingness to take action on behalf of universal values. You know, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which has been kind of ignored recently, needs to be paid attention to. It was a call to action, if you will, very much led by our own Eleanor Roosevelt, who was on the committee that drafted it. And I hope all the students here will read it, because it came out of the horrors of World War II, and there was a real commitment on the part of the people who were leaders then, men and women, predominantly men, but women with, their own voices at the table, like Eleanor Roosevelt, who were trying to craft a statement of values that would stand the test of time, that would repudiate the horrors of the First and Second World War and so much else that happened at the same time and continues, unfortunately, into the present day. So we need to reassert our commitment to universal human rights. And it was Eleanor Roosevelt and some stalwart allies of hers that made sure women were mentioned, because in the original draft, they were not. And in the final draft, women were included along with men, because the rights that were being enumerated were to be applied to every human being. And we have lost that sense of mission and commitment. And it's so important not to be pessimistic, as Anne reminds us, because it is not only irresponsible, but it's defeatist. But it's also a rebuke to everybody who came before, as well as the awardees sitting on this stage, that change is possible, progress is possible, and we are engaged right now in a huge global struggle between democracy and autocracy. And we all have to do our part, and maybe being reminded of not just the sacrifice of those who came before, but the optimism, the hopefulness of people who did things like draft the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that it didn't have to be this way. You know, it didn't have to be dictators in Venezuela or in the Philippines or in Bangladesh. It didn't have to be dictators like Putin invading another country. This doesn't have to happen, and the world has to speak with, you know, a much louder, unified voice that there is a better way. And especially at this time in our history, as Maria reminds us, you know, we're at a real inflection point. There are a lot of other countries that are at risk. And there are places that have been democracies for a very long time that are beginning to turn on our fundamental values, to forget our constitutional guarantees and rights and freedoms. So while we watch people struggle to regain it, those of us who are privileged to still have that kind of opportunity to be able to speak out, to be able to stand up, to be able to vote for our leaders, all of that, we have to do our part to support those around the world who are struggling to have the same opportunity, but we have to make sure we protect it here at home. So I just think this is a moment for people to really learn from our past, learn from what has gone on and who has been on the forefront of democracy and freedom before, and to repledge ourselves to protecting what we have and doing everything we can to make sure it is not slowly but surely eroded away, whether it's by executive power, legislative, or judicial power that wants to undermine our constitutional rights. We have to stand up and speak out and know they are linked to universal human rights as well.
So we have some students who want to ask questions. Yijing Shen, is she here?
Hi, thank you very much for telling your stories. I was genuinely moved. So my question would be, like, how do women in pro-democracy movements fight against both authoritarianism and patriarchy at the same time, especially when they're facing gender-based power imbalance amongst community groups because of the social norms? Thank you.
Who wants to tackle that, Maria?
Yeah, I'll pick it up quickly, and I'm sure you'll hear more. So first, understand that we have seen in every country around the world, I didn't talk about tech, but is there anyone here without a cell phone? Right? Okay, so we're all on this, and you have to understand that the technology that you carry with you that is extremely personal, none of it is anchored in facts. If you're on social media, the two fracture lines that are targeted in every country around the world is gender and race. And gender, in the Philippines in 2017, women were attacked at least 10 times more than men. When you talk about the Beijing Declaration, so look at the progress. I used to chase Hillary. I was in Beijing, and I was chasing her, but now I'm sitting next to her. That's progress, right? But how do we deal with this? First, understand, first of all, look at the room full of people. It's about building community, right? I think about three things, and those three things are critical for progress. Technology, that's the backbone that this is on, and the technology we're on is corrupt. The public information ecosystem, so first demand better. Technology, journalism, If you haven't looked at media consolidation in the United States, please look. This has happened in the Philippines. The largest broadcaster in the Philippines lost its license to operate. We call it a franchise. And it never regained it. What you lose in these time periods, it takes so much more to claw back. So journalism, because you need facts. We are in Washington, D.C., not in the Philippines. But if I pound 1,000,000 times, we're in the Philippines, some people will think we're in the Philippines, right? So journalism, technology, and this is the third part, community. Women have moved forward because we've built community. So it's gonna be a little bit harder because we're gonna have to fight the tech. The tech I call information integrity is the mother of all battles. Because if we lose the battle for facts, we cannot deal with climate change. We cannot deal with women's rights if we do not live in the same shared reality. So the first is, let's claw back what we have lost. It's because we have, since we've been here. Let's demand better. And then build communities of action. I think last part, embrace your fear. Like this moment, it's okay to be afraid. And the way you deal with that, the way we dealt with it in Rappler was to move into the physical world, to build our communities of action, to plan the worst case scenarios and drill them if we need to in order to move forward. And guess what? You can move forward. The man who's tried to jail me for over a century, I had at one point 21 investigations. He was arrested in March this year. Here's the best part for alleged, I always write alleged crimes against humanity, but partly because of the reporting that Rappler has done. He's in jail at The Hague waiting for a trial. So, yeah, move, communities.
Ellie Markwick, graduate student. Ellie?
Such incredible
Like
career.
we can't hear.
Oh, sorry. Hi there. Thank you all so much for being here today. All of you have had incredible careers where you have spoken truth to power, even when there are personal risks involved. Given the current political climate in the United States, especially with some of the crackdown regarding criticisms against this administration, what can students do to engage in advocacy when there's a fear of the risk of reprisal? Thank you.
So the most important thing that you can do is make friends. And by that, I mean the most important thing you can do is reach out of the group that you're in and reach to other groups. So what we need now in the United States, just as we had in Poland after 2015, just as we've had in Venezuela, what we need is a really broad coalition that includes people of the center-right, people of the center-left, people who care about climate change, people who care about economic suffering, and we need to pull them together around common themes and common interests. Most of us in this, we're all guilty of spending too much time inside our own silos. And the more you can make friends with other groups and other people who think differently from you, the more effective you will be. The other thing I always tell people when they ask me, what can I do? The answer, there isn't a single answer, because the answer depends a lot on who you are. So if you're a law student, you can work on the many, many lawsuits that are going on right now. You can contribute your knowledge and help to that. If you are a doctor or a medical student, you can be part of the advocacy for vaccines and for good health information. If you are someone who's studying education or who's studying history, you can begin to think about how we're going to teach real history and good history going into the future at a moment when a lot of people are trying to tell lies, essentially, about what happened in the past. You know, if you work on international relations, you can join with women like these or with others to think about how to learn lessons from their countries and how to bring conversation and information from the United States to theirs. So what you do depends on who you are. The most important thing is to create organizations, create groups, and reach across boundaries.
Excellent advice. And we only have time for one more question, and that's going to be from Ellie Markwick, graduate student in security studies. Ellie?
I just spoke. She just spoke.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kirsten Angelis, another the graduate in security studies.
Hi, thank you so much for all that you do and for being custodians of peace. My name is Kirsten Angeles. I'm from the Philippines. Maraming salamat po. My question is something that I've been struggling with and thinking about being here in Georgetown. How can one, especially youth from a country like the Philippines, navigate the fields of security and peace? Space is often dominated by Western voices, strong Western voices, and be able to contribute meaningfully to the conversation and use our voices to shape true peace outcomes.
I think from a Filipina to a Filipina.
Magandang hapon. Oh my gosh, it's so nice to see you. I actually think as the global north falters, leadership can come from the global south. And, right? And at the UN General Assembly, this is the 80th year, Universal Declaration of Human Rights was 75 years ago, right? There's a small grouping. There's one that started on information integrity in 2022 that was led by Canada and the Netherlands. But this UN meeting, led by Latin America, Brazil, Chile, 20 nations coming together. Because what we forget is security has to begin with information, right? So this security, information integrity, is a key push forward of Brazil when it led the G20, and it's now 20 nations together focusing on information integrity. Women are leading this charge. Hillary said this earlier, right? Like in many of our countries, strangely enough, in the Philippines, the people Duterte targeted were women. And, you know, I think what was interesting is we had a senator who went to jail for 7 years. She's now won her cases, but who will give her back the 7 years of her life? Women are also leading the pushback. And I think you move, you continue step by step, but guys, we need you in this, right? So I think this is an opportunity, and this is the part maybe you can hear the negative about the world we live in today, and there's so much that is negative. It's a world on fire. But creative destruction also means that if you acknowledge the world has been destroyed, you can now create. And you're in Georgetown, girl. Create.
So I'm sure you're all going to leave here inspired by the extraordinary courage and work that these guardians of democracy have engaged in. They've been doing their job safeguarding democracy. And I hope that all of you, after hearing what you just heard, will realize, if you haven't already, that we all have a job to do in the same pursuit. So we're calling on all of you to be part of the call for action to safeguard democracy here and around the world. And with that, our program concludes. But before we leave, I want to say two things. One, I want to say, as it always is the case, it took a village to get to this point. And I want to thank a few people who played really prominent roles in moving this forward. Michelle Brady, Helen Rocker, Rebecca Rattle, Sarah Rutherford, Colleen McMahon, but our whole staff at the Institute, but also to the university, to Jackson Maynard, to the security forces, to everybody who played a role. We're very, very grateful that we could have all of these wonderful people here to inspire us to go forward. And I also want to ask our audience to please stay put for a moment till we can leave the stage, and then we can all go about all the work that we now are inspired to do as a result of what we've heard today. So thank you all for coming, and ever onward.